So perhaps I can take this microphone. Am I audible?
Close to your,
A good afternoon to all of you in the room, and a good afternoon also to those who are joining us online today. My name is Dr. Rüdiger Krech, and I'm the Director for Health Promotion in WHO. We are here today to mark the 20-year anniversary of the adoption of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control by the World Health Assembly. For those of us who are working in public health, the importance of this treaty cannot be overstated. Today, we want to honor history, but we also want to look towards the future as we continue working towards a tobacco-free world. Every year, more than 8 million people die due to tobacco use, including over 1 million from secondhand smoke. As Dr. Tedros once stated, if tobacco was a virus, it would long ago have been called a pandemic, and the world would marshal every resource to stop it. We have the tools to counter this tobacco pandemic. The WHO FCTC is the political guidance for our efforts in tobacco control and needs to remain central as we move forward. We also need to keep our eye on the goal. The target of 30% relative reduction in tobacco use is important and has been committed by all countries, and this needs to remain our focus. To mark the occasion, I would now like to invite you to watch a short video as we take a trip down memory lane.
20 years ago, something remarkable happened. We stood together against one of the most serious health threats the world has ever faced. Little did we know that we were writing the first chapter of a new legacy. A legacy that stands on the shoulders of multiple generations across the globe. From the early pioneers who dared to believe in the potential of a better future,
to fight a common threat,
to a brand new generation of advocates who are destined to lead us to a tobacco-free world. On that eventful day in 2003, at the groundbreaking 56th World Health Assembly, we witnessed a paradigm shift in ensuring people's right to the highest standard of health, the adoption of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control.
an effective framework convention obliges us all, inspires action.
WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control are adopted.
Over the years, the WHO FCTC has played a vital role in the reduction of tobacco use worldwide. Since its inception, the WHO FCTC has been the driving force in tobacco control, establishing commitments and providing guidance and support on a wide range of measures, from regulations on tobacco advertising and packaging to higher taxes on tobacco products, bans on smoking in public places, and legal victories against the tobacco industry. Today, we stand proud, 182 parties strong, representing more than 90% of the world's population, determined to end the tobacco epidemic. But the fight is far from over. The tobacco epidemic remains one of the most serious global threats the human race and Mother Nature have ever faced. Every year, tobacco kills 8 million people worldwide, mainly in low and middle-income countries, where 80% of the world's smokers live. And that annual toll includes 1.2 million deaths just from exposure to second-hand smoke, over $1 trillion in healthcare costs and lost productivity, and the staggering loss of 600 million trees, 200,000 hectares of land, 22 billion tons of water, and the production of 84 million tons of CO2. The impact of tobacco on sustainable development can no longer be ignored. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the WHO FCTC, we vow to build on our legacy of fighting for a tobacco-free world for generations to come. History is meant to be written by those who dare to believe that a better, healthier, and more equitable world is possible. Let's continue writing history together.
What an amazing history. I would now like to invite the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, to deliver his welcome remarks. Dr. Tedros, you have the floor.
Vielen Dank, Rudiger. Your Excellency, Minister Ali Mrabat, Your Excellency, Minister Kwaku, Dr. Lynn Vold, Dr. Reina Roa, Ms. Paula Jones, Dr. Adriana Blanco Marquizo, and I would like also to recognize the presence of Dr. Bronwyn King, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. 20 years ago, WHO member states unanimously adopted the first public health treaty negotiated under the WHO Constitution, the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. It was nicely presented in the video you just watched. That's why, by the way, we recognized also the contribution of our former DG and former Prime Minister, Dr. Gro Harlem, at the beginning of at the opening of the Assembly. Today, the world is still benefiting from the impacts of this historic decision. The WHO FCTC is an evidence-based treaty that represents a milestone in public health and provides new legal dimensions for international cooperation. The negotiation and adoption of the convention may provide useful lessons to WHO member states negotiating the new pandemic accord. And I hope by May 2024 we will have our second agreement in our history. Tobacco is one of the biggest public health threats the world has ever faced. It kills more than 8 million people a year, including more than 1 million from secondhand smoke. Tobacco has massive costs for already overstrained health systems and for economies, societies, and the environment. Tobacco industry interference, of course, has been a major hurdle since the beginning and continue to be so. A study last year, as you may remember, in the journal Tobacco Control showed how tobacco companies are systematically advertising cigarettes to children near playgrounds, near schools, in more than 40 low and middle income countries. By the way, this is not just limited to low and middle income countries, even in high income countries. They're trapping our children. The strategies of the tobacco industry is impacting children at an early age. Many are starting to smoke 12, 13, 14. And the industry tells us that this is a harm reduction in e-cigarette or vaping. First of all, electronic cigarette and vaping is harmful. But not only that, it's a trap to recruit children at an early age to make them their customers all their life. Ask yourself, what sort of people market products they know are deadly to children? What kind of moral is this? To be honest, I'm really, really worried. Not only this article, you can check the many articles, how children are being targeted. It's the responsibility of all of us as public health professionals and as parents to protect our children from the predatory tactics of the tobacco industry. Lack of technical capacity and sustainable financing for tobacco control programs also prevent effective implementation in many countries. This is why WHO is calling for member states to increase tobacco taxes, to drive down demand and to generate revenues which can be invested in health. Next week, on the 31st of May, we will celebrate World No Tobacco Day. The theme for this year's campaign is Grow Food, Not Tobacco. It aims to raise awareness about alternative crop production for tobacco farmers and encourage them to grow sustainable, nutritious crops, and for governments to end subsidies for tobacco farming. The campaign exposes the tobacco industry's efforts to interfere with the efforts to switch to sustainable crops, which could help alleviate the global food crisis. Let me conclude by highlighting three key areas of focus. First, we urge all member states to stand strong in their tobacco control efforts in the face of industry interference. Second, we urge all member states who are not yet party to the convention to ratify it. Third, we urge all member states to sign on to the protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products. And I ask all parents to protect their kids. It's their responsibility from the tobacco industry. Thank you all for your commitment to a tobacco-free future for our children and grandchildren. I think we should say enough is enough. I thank you, and back to you, Rudiger.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. I would now like to invite my colleague and friend, Dr. Adriana Blanco-Marquizo, to deliver her intervention. Dr. Blanco-Marquizo was appointed head of the Secretariat of the WHO FCTC in March 2020. She currently leads a team of almost 30 staff here in Geneva. Prior to that, she was chief of the NCD Risk Factors and Nutrition Unit in the WHO Regional Office for the Americas. Adriana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rudiger. Dear Dr. Tedros, Your Excellency Minister Ali Margret, Your Excellency Minister Uwaku Eyemang Manu, Dr. Linebold, Dr. Reina Roa, Dr. Sharbat Basborsa da Silva, and Mrs. Paula Jones. And now I'm going to change to Spanish since we have interpretation to make a little more diversity in the language. So, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Framework Convention. As the Director General, Dr. Tedros, has just said, this was a paradigm change for public health, dealing with a problem, the consequences of which were felt in health, but the causes of which could be dealt with through an international treaty, was a real milestone and a paradigm change for public health. And as Director General Tedros was saying, this really laid the foundations for a new treaty, which is now being discussed in connection with pandemic preparedness. A lot of things have happened over these past 20 years since the Framework Convention came into force. There's been a great deal of progress. And I think 20 years ago, we couldn't have imagined that so many countries would sign up to an international agreement. Practically 90% of the world's population is covered. A lot of these countries have implemented many of the measures contained in the convention. And it's a question of, is the glass half full or half empty? But I prefer to be optimistic and think that it's half full. A lot of countries who have implemented smoke-free environments. A lot of countries have also implemented measures connected with packaging and labeling. Plain packaging was, of course, pioneered by Australia in this respect. A lot of other measures have been taken, and as Director General Tedros was saying, with regard to increases in taxation on tobacco, this is perhaps the key point in reducing tobacco consumption, and hasn't yet been explored in as many as dimensions it could be in many countries. And we have a lot of support being provided in this area. WHO has a specific team dedicated to the issue of tobacco taxation, and the World Bank is also working along with us on that issue. So support can be offered to countries interested in moving forward with that particular issue. There's the issue of the constant interference of the tobacco industry, which is a major issue. The tobacco industry was always present from day one when the treaty was being discussed and negotiated, and whenever countries try to introduce legislation, they always see interference from the industry, coming up with supposed evidence not based on scientific proof, for instance, or generating distractions with questions saying, well, we're not really sure that science does prove this. So the burden of proof to demonstrate once again in each of these countries that tobacco is responsible for many health issues is an issue. The industry also comes up with false solutions, such as incorporating so-called filters into tobacco products, and as we know, that's not a solution to the health problems, and it even generates other problems, including environmental ones. And a lot of countries are now starting to look into the possibility of banning filters as a supposed solution. Then there's the issue of light or mild cigarettes, which was just a cosmetic difference in terms of the measurement of the content, and actually there's only a cosmetic difference. And as Dr. Tedros was saying, even if the industry says that it is coming up with new solutions, new products that can stop people from smoking, these new products are actually generating a new wave of nicotine addicts in our young people. And we need to think very carefully about this. Of course, we need to help people who want to give up smoking in order to reduce tobacco consumption. But in the long term, we also need to think, and this is one of the objectives of the Framework Convention, on how to curb consumption in our young people and in our personal lives. We have grandchildren, me and the Director General, and we know how important it is to protect those young generations from being manipulated by an industry which is just interested in profit. So thank you very much indeed for listening and for giving me the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrea.
Challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Ali Mrabit, the Tunisian Minister of Health, established a multi-partner partnership for tobacco control and adopted a decree mandating graphic health warnings to cover 70% of the packaging of tobacco products, warning about the harmful effects of smoking. The Minister of Health also issued a decision in January 2023 to ban smoking in open and closed public spaces. Minister, you faced several challenges in the development of this decision, including pushback by the tobacco industry and its front groups. You also established a high-level multisectoral national anti-smoking committee chaired by the head of the government. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
May the peace and blessing of God be upon you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you and to speak about Tunisian tobacco control. And to do diversity, I speak Arabic. السيد المدير العام لمنظمة الصحة العالمية
Director General Dr. Tedros, Madam Executive Secretary of the FCTC, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of states parties to the Framework Convention, distinguished delegates, allow me to begin my comments by saying how most wholeheartedly we thank and commend WHO and the Secretariat of the FCTC for the support given to Tunisia in seeking to give effect to the Convention and to implement its provisions. I'd like to start by telling you a little about tobacco consumption in Tunisia. Tobacco we consider to be one of the most serious risk factors we have for many NCDs. And we know that NCDs are responsible for more than 2/3 of deaths in Tunisia and also account for more than 2/3 of the health budget if you look at the medicines that have to be prescribed to treat them. Therefore, we want to reduce tobacco consumption, and our goal is a 30% drop in consumption in order to prevent premature deaths caused by NCDs. We're hoping to see a reduction of 25% by 2025. If we are to attain that goal, we recognise that a number of things have to be done, and the Ministry of Health has put in place a multi-sectoral national strategy for the prevention and control of NCDs for the period 2018-2025. And a lot of that strategy is devoted to the issue of tobacco control. It's one of the most significant parts of it. In Tunisia, 25% of people over the age of 15 smoke. As we know, investing in measures to control tobacco consumption over 7 years, over a 7-year period, could cut that figure by 46%. And could also bring down consumption in general. We believe that this means that 55,000 lives could be saved in that period, and between now and 2025 we could see savings amounting to around $5 billion. So it's clear why we've set that goal. But in seeking to look at measures that can bring about a drop in tobacco consumption by 30%, we recognized that we had to take action. We worked with other sectors who are concerned by this, and we also worked in partnership with the WHO and the Convention Secretariat. We stepped up our activities in a number of areas. I'll just refer to a few of them. Firstly, education and awareness raising about the dangers of tobacco. Secondly, support for people who want to give up smoking. And we provided that support through 54 clinics in the country that were there to provide support to people who wanted to stop smoking. Nicotine substitutes were made available free of charge to people who wanted to give up smoking. Thirdly, new legislation was adopted on tobacco control. We also want to revive our legislation on illicit trade in tobacco. This is legislation that dates back to 1998, and we want to bring it in line with the provisions of the FCTC ratified by Tunisia in 2010. We now have a bill to that effect going through our parliament. It involves a number of things, including a total ban on smoking in public places, also a ban on the sale of individual cigarettes, a ban on the sale of cigarettes to persons under 18, a ban on advertising and sponsorship related to tobacco directly or indirectly in the media. We also ensure that warnings are on packaging, also pictures illustrating the dangers of smoking, and this must be there on at least 70% of the packaging. We've started all of this, and we are awaiting the adoption of this bill. We expect that it will happen later this year. In the meantime, however, we have established a multi-sectoral high-level committee on tobacco control to bring together the work being done in different areas. The purpose of this is to make it possible for our strategy to succeed. We've taken other steps focusing on human resources so that we have more than 25% of people, an increase of 25% in those who are working directly on tobacco control. In conclusion, I want once again to thank the Convention Secretariat, also WHO and UNEP. I thank them for their ongoing support to Tunisia in our efforts, and we very much hope that God will crown all of our work with success. Thank you.
Shukran, Minister Mrabet. Kwaku Ageman Manu is the Minister of Health of Ghana, but he's also a long-standing Member of Parliament for Doma Central in Bono region of Ghana. He's now serving in his third term. Sir, I commend the government of Ghana for its decision to raise health taxes on tobacco, alcohol, and sugar-sweetened beverages in the new Excise Duty Act, signed by the President on 14th of April of this year. This decision represents the first such increase in health taxes in almost a decade in Ghana and was applauded by the public health and development community. The new Excise Duty Act also includes a tax on e-cigarette liquids at levels comparable to many high-income countries. It doubled the tax rate for spirits and wines. Finally, it increased the tax rate on sugar-sweetened beverages. Mr. Kwaku Ageman Manu, please share with us what difference has it made for Ghana to be a party to this tobacco control treaty, a legally binding instrument. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Director General, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of Ghana, I wish to first congratulate the WHO and all member states for the historic treaty since the birth of WHO. Indeed, this historic treaty was developed in response to the globalization of the tobacco epidemic, a treaty that reaffirms the right of all people to the highest standard of health. This convention, since its entry into force, has represented a milestone for the promotion of public health and provides new legal dimensions for international health cooperation. The convention over the last 2 decades has sought to protect present and future generations from the devastating health, social, environmental, and economic consequences of tobacco consumption and exposure to tobacco, the prevalence of tobacco use and exposure to tobacco smoke. In Ghana, the ratification of the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control led to the passage of the Public Health Act in 2012, Act 851, with sections covering ban on all forms of tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, tobacco packaging and labeling provisions, ban of smoking in public places, unless in the designated smoking area, age restrictions, public education on tobacco use, tobacco cessation, prohibiting sales in certain places, among others. We further passed the Tobacco Control Regulations 2016, LI 2247, which mandated large public health warnings covering 50% front and 60% back of the principal display areas of smoked tobacco products requirements for designated smoking areas, illicit tobacco trade, tobacco industry interference. The implementation of the treaty has over the years revealed how fit for purpose it has been to ensure universal access to healthcare and ensure that populations are protected from emergencies and promote well-being. Through these legislations and their implementation, we have seen some good reduction of tobacco smoking, to the extent that those who smoke tobacco in our country now hide in several places to smoke. So you don't easily see young men and women, elderly ones, smoking in public places so easily. The tobacco industry seems to have folded in my country. We had a very huge tobacco company that was processing tobacco planted by farmers, some part of my own region. Over the years, when they packed and left our country, that land that was being used for tobacco plantations is now being used for mango plantation and cassava plantation for food. So you can't find tobacco farmers in our country so easily any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, tackling tobacco use across the world is a priority within the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Tobacco control is relevant to the achievement of many SDGs, particularly SDG 3.4, that calls on action to achieve a 1/3 reduction in premature mortality from NCDs by 2030. With the dividends realized in the implementation of this treaty and the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, the world now more than ever needs to negotiate an instrument under the Constitution of the World Health Organization to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response to protect the world from future infectious diseases. As we emulate the WHO FCTC in negotiating an instrument to strengthen the global health architecture to promote health and well-being, let us strive for inclusivity, transparency, efficiency, and consensus building. We should never underestimate the power of multilateralism and leadership of member states to make future conventions a reality. We anticipate many more anniversaries in the future to celebrate more achievements and successes while galvanizing inspiration to tackle and face the health challenges of the future. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. May I now turn to Dr. Line Volz, the Director General at the Department of Public Health, Ministry of Health and Care Services in Norway. As many of us know, Norway was the first country to ratify the WHO FCTC back in June 2004. And as we saw in the video earlier, Dr. Gro Harlem Brundtland, former WHO Director General and Prime Minister of Norway, was so instrumental in the treaty negotiations. Norway has a strong history of being an early adopter of strong tobacco control measures. For example, Norway was the first country in the world to introduce bans on all traditional forms of advertising of tobacco products way back in the 1970s. And was also amongst the first countries to introduce standardized tobacco packaging and the first country to standardize smokeless tobacco boxes. Dr. Vold, you have the floor.
Thank you. Dear Ministers, Director General, and distinguished colleagues, I am happy to represent Norway at this strategic roundtable, as the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control is a key priority in Norwegian public health policy. As Dr. Krech mentioned, Norway has a long history of tobacco control, starting with the Tobacco Control Act being adopted in 1973, with advertising ban, age limits, and health warnings. Since then, all subsequent governments have taken new initiatives to reduce the impact of the tobacco epidemic. Our current government released a new national tobacco strategy in March this year, and the main objectives of the strategy are: the prevalence of daily tobacco users shall be below 5% in all age and educational groups. Children born in 2010 and later shall be a tobacco and nicotine-free generation. All current smokers shall be offered free smoking cessation help. The access to tobacco and nicotine products shall be substantially reduced in order to protect children and young people. No one shall be exposed to tobacco from others. And in line with our FCTC obligation, the tobacco industry shall not be able to influence the tobacco policy. As in most countries, the biggest obstacle for reaching our goal of a tobacco-free society in Norway is tobacco industry tactics. This is why we have made the full implementation of FCTC Article 5.3 a priority in the new strategy period. Tobacco is both a health and sustainable development issue. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development includes a specific target focused on the implementation of the FCTC. Norway is one of the contributors to the FCTC 2030 project, which supports low and middle-income countries eligible to receive official development assistance to further their work in FCTC implementation. In my view, this is one of the most effective interventions to curb the growing burden of NCDs. Nevertheless, the FCTC has had an important impact also in high-income countries, such as Norway. It has both been instrumental in the national political debate, pushing us to constantly go further, but also as an important basis for defense in lawsuits from the tobacco industry, last when we were sued for introducing plain packaging. The FCTC has also provided a platform for new opportunities for international cooperation and learning from others' examples and experiences, which Norway has also benefited from. Above all, I believe that FCTC has given us a joint goal and common platform for tackling new developments and challenges on the global tobacco control scene. And in closing, I would like to congratulate all of you who have contributed to the success of the convention, some of you already back in the treaty negotiations in the early 2000s, and others working daily to implement and follow through on the principles and obligations of the FCTC. Congratulations to us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wold. Dr. Reina Rua Rodriguez is Panama's focal point for tobacco control, and Dr. Rua has played a key role in Panama's ratification of the WHO FCTC overall. She's currently leading the organization of the upcoming COP10 and MOP3, which will take place in Panama in November 2023. I would now like to invite you, Dr. Rua, to deliver your speech. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon. The Framework Convention was the first international public health treaty, as has been said, and undoubtedly it paved the way towards better health worldwide, with better well-being and standards of living all over the world, as Dr. Tedros has said as well. In fact, one of the WHO's main objectives over its 75 years history was to ensure that this process got underway. I was lucky enough to represent my country throughout the negotiation of the treaty. And as I was writing my intervention today, it brought back a lot of memories that I'd like to share with you. I remember myself trying to understand why we had to say just elegant, nice words when tobacco in health means death, disability, and health problems. And those are the problems that health workers face on a daily basis. Secondly, I learned about the complexity and difficulties of this process. I learned about the pressure from the tobacco industry and its persistent interference being a unprecedented and permanent barrier. And often we thought we would never see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the tremendous role of NGOs with the materials that they brought and the tremendous contribution that they made. And there I'd like to think about San Francisco Logrado, who played such an important role in that process. And then the decision to stop the clock on the last day of the negotiation. Because in spite of all of the disagreements and disagreements that had arisen, there was a common interest in promoting human health, in protecting lives, and then the leadership and diplomatic skill shown by Brazil as a leader in the process. The reality today, though, is that we have made great progress, but at the global level, the tobacco industry is renewing its strategies to interfere in the party's decision-making. And they are coming up with novel products in order to ensure that people remain addicted and continue to die and suffer. But we have seen continued leadership and determination to move forward with implementation of the FCTC and the protocol. We've seen its guidelines, and of course we know that the situation is difficult from one place to different, from one place to another, but the overriding goal is to protect the health of our populations. But unfortunately, we need to keep up these efforts. We need to renew our strategies in order to try to reach that 30% relative reduction in tobacco use goal. Panama has a rate of 5% in our adults, but of course the situation differs from one place to another in the country, and so we have a remaining challenge to continue this struggle, so that in every part of the country that rate is below 5%. There are new challenges that we're also facing by these novel and emerging nicotine products. They may seem innocuous, or they're presented as such, but they are addictive for our young people. And we're already seeing new types of lung diseases and other health consequences linked to these products. This 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Framework Convention means that we need to think carefully about how to continue to deal with the outstanding issues, many of which we are facing in Panama. The regulation of content, the sustained increase of taxation from a health perspective, so that we can try to move forward with implementing the FCTC, challenges connected with advertising and marketing of novel tobacco-related products, and the abuse of advertising over social network in films and in streaming channels. And then how to actually strengthen coverage and universal access to tobacco cessation support. We shouldn't forget that smokers are the first victims of the tobacco industry. Some responses to these questions should be sketched out in COP10, when we hope to see each other again after a 5-year absence, in order to take decisions that renew our struggle and strengthen our commitment to implementing the convention. In the meantime, I invite member states who have yet to ratify the convention to do so, and I invite parties to also look into ratifying and implementing the protocol. There's always an excuse that's used by the industry of trying to stop our efforts if that hasn't been done. And finally, I look forward to seeing you all in beautiful Panama City. The Director General, I'm looking forward to seeing you as well in our country, so that we can meet all together and drive healthy lives together. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Roa.
Thank you, Dr. Roa.
Dr. Jarbas Barbosa da Silva is the director of the Pan-American Health Organization, and of course, Dr. Barbosa, the regional director for the Americas of WHO. Before that, he served as PAHO Assistant Director, leading 5 technical departments in PAHO's Revolving Fund, a special program to increase equitable access to vaccines in the region. Dr. Jarbas, I would like to invite you to share your perspectives from the region of the Americas. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Roger. Dear dear WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, dear Dr. Adriana Blanco, Head of the Secretariat of WHO FCTC, honorable ministers, dear panelists that are sharing with me this very important event, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to join you today and share my perspectives on the critical importance of the WHO FCTC as a supranational instrument for health governance. In the region of the Americas, we have witnessed tremendous advance in the prevention and control of tobacco use since the Convention's entry into force in 2005 in the majority of our member states. These gains have continued even during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, South America became the first sub-region of the Americas to become 100% smoke-free in indoor public spaces, following the adoption of regulatory measures in Bolivia and Paraguay. At the end of 2021, Mexico also adopted 100% smoke-free environments and banned all forms of tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. As a result of these measures, 63% of the population in the Americas, over 600 million persons, are now protected from exposure to tobacco smoke. Moreover, in 2022, Paraguay ratified the protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products, which will further advance regional efforts in this area. We are also making progress in the regulation of novel and emerging nicotine and tobacco products, such as e-cigarettes, with Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Panama revising their respective national legal frameworks. However, despite these public health achievements, we must remember that 16% of adults and 11% of youth in the Americas still use tobacco products, while 11 countries, representing almost a third of our member states, are yet to implement smoke-free environments. The implementation of this measure is mainly under the purview of health authorities, and similarly, the implementation of health warnings on cigarette packages, a measure proven to reduce their demand, also requires intervention by national authorities. I'm thus calling on our ministries of health to rapidly implement these measures. An evolving threat to health has been the propagation of novel and emerging nicotine and tobacco products globally. For us to successfully confront this challenge, we must collaborate more effectively, facilitate engagement between scientists and health authorities to build knowledge and evidence, and share experiences on the challenges, achievements, and needs that we face regarding these novel and emerging products in a systematic way. We, as the public health community, must also do more to prevent interference from the tobacco industry and its allies in our region and in the world. We have started monitoring policies aimed to the management of conflict of interest in the region of the Americas, and we look forward to join forces with you, WHO, Ministry of Health, civil society organizations, as we seek to build expertise and capacity in this area. Finally, I also wish to share with you that we are honored to once again support the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, parties in our region, in the organization of the pre-conference of the parties of the Americas taking place in Brazil in October. This pre-conference is in preparation for the 10th session of the Conference of the Parties to the WHO FCTC and the third meeting of the parties to the protocol, which will take place in Panama in November and December this year. I wish to publicly thank Panama for its leadership in hosting these two events and acknowledge the contributions of Dr. Reina Roa, a colleague and a friend of IPARO and a recipient of this year's World No Tobacco Day Award. Congratulations to you, Reina. The Americas take special pride in its outstanding female leaders on global tobacco control. I'm very honored to share this table with three of them, Reina, Adriana Blanco, and Paula Jones. I sincerely thank you for your leadership. Thank you to the WHO FCTC Secretariat and WHO for inviting us to participate in this very important event. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jabas. Tobacco control civil society organizations mobilized countries during the negotiations of the treaty between 1999 and 2003. These NGOs and coalitions around the world embraced the idea of an international tobacco control treaty and came together in full support and eventually become an important non-state actor within the international ecosystem of tobacco control. I'm honored today to introduce Mrs. Paola Jones. Mrs. Jones is the co-founder and director of ACT Health Promotion, a Brazilian coalition to support the implementation of the WHO FCTC in Brazil. Since 2013, ACT has expanded its scope of work to include the agenda of the NCDs. Paola, I've heard quite a few voices in ministries of health saying, oh, we have the FCTC, that's a big success, the work is done. What do you tell those people?
Well, good afternoon, dear Dr. Tedros, Her Excellencies. I'm not so used to sit at this side. I'm always been part of a civil society coalition, including having the yellow badges, so I'm always out there or up there. So it's quite special, and I feel very honored to be here, particularly because we are talking about the 20-year anniversary of the FCTC. I've been there since the very beginning, and it's really like, I'm very emotional about seeing all these faces around here that we have been seeing here. And also looking at watching the video and getting this, like this movie coming in my head of all the process that we went through the negotiations. So I would like here also to say hello to all my FCA colleagues, which is now called the Global Alliance for Tobacco Control. I think it was a very that's where I learned everything. It was in this process at the global level and then bringing it back to the national level. And that's where I learned how to become an advocate, a global level advocate and a national level advocate. And I think I really feel honored that the recognition about the civil society contribution to the treaty, and it's recognized in the text of the treaty, which is very nice too. And I mean, it's not done. It's obviously not done. I think we have, I mean, Adriana has already said it, and I mean, we have advanced in many areas. Obviously, it was so important, like, for example, smoke-free environments and like front-of-pack labeling policies, pictorial warning labeling policies. Taxation is still sub-utilized. I think we still need to use more taxation. That's an area that we need to advance. Obviously, there is the threat of the new products that is just taking new forms, and then with the explosion of youth consumption in some places, with all modalities of new products. So it's not done, and I suspect it will never be completely done. But in the tobacco industry, it's alive. We have also heard it from all the panelists here and the ministers. We know that whoever is there in the field, working at the national level, governments work at the national level, and also here, the global negotiations, you know it well, that's the industry interference has been there always. I think we have really done something very special in the area of tobacco, and coming now to the broader NCD risk factors agenda, including air pollution. I think we need to learn some lessons from the FCTC. So besides continuing the hard work on tobacco control, and congratulations now to Rain and to Panama to take the next COP, and I think there is a lot to be discussed there, I think we should better take advantage of the synergies with the other risk factors. I don't think we are doing as well as we could. Starting with the recognition, like our Article 5.3 in the FCTC, it was so hard to get through it. The recognition that we need to manage the interference, and we need to create like barriers for the interference, and the interference is not different in their areas. It's the same if we look to alcohol policy, how little we have advanced. It's the same when we look around at food policy issues. So I think that's a great opportunity. And also like taxation of these unhealthy products, it's a must if we want to advance in public health, and it's also a way of helping to finance the SDGs. So I think there are too many, I think there are many connections and links there that we need to take advantage of. And another thing, it's like being here as a Brazilian also, because we are the largest tobacco leaf exporters. So putting now my Brazilian hat on, it's like it was so difficult to advance with the ratification of the treaty in Brazil. It took us 2 years, all because of the industry using the weaker, the growers, the tobacco growers as a front group, as a shield, so we could not advance with the policies. So I couldn't be happier with the theme of the World No Tobacco Day this year, because I think it talks a lot to us in so many different ways. From like the perspective of the growers, that we need to give them alternatives to tobacco growing. We need to set up policies that so that they can really grow healthy food. And this is also connected with our like broader agenda of like the food policy issues. And one last sentence, because you already stood up there, so probably time is over. It's like we should recognize that, for example, in the case of taxation, what we are and I would like to congratulate the Minister of Ghana, because health taxes, I think, is the way to go, and say that SSBs and ultra-processed beverages and foods are equal to cigarettes. When you need to recognize that and to grow healthy food and use the land use for tobacco for that. And thank you so much for the opportunity of being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paula, and it's so great to see you being on our side. So thank you very much for that. Now let me turn to a couple of discussants that we also have today with us. First of all, Dr. Douglas Betcher, Senior Advisor at WHO, but he was also the WHO's principal focal point for providing Secretariat support for the negotiation of the WHO FCTC. Douglas, you are, if I may say, the father of the FCTC. You have helped it come to life. You have been the mastermind behind the convention. In your view, why is the WHO FCTC negotiation process a model for global health diplomacy? As the WHO FCTC is one of the few legally binding instruments that we have in global health, and as member states are currently negotiating the pandemic accord, what are the lessons learned from the WHO FCTC for negotiation of the agreement? Douglas, the floor is yours.
Very much, Rudiger. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's a real pleasure. Wonderful to be here for this fantastic event. The WHO FCTC and its miraculous negotiation, rapid entry into force, and life-saving, it's definitely life-saving implementation, proves that global health diplomacy is a core plank, a core element of health development. What we call the power of the process was sustained by WHO's member states during the negotiation. That involved a demanding, intense, whole-of-government approach to push forward the Framework Convention. One novel element, for example, it brought together different sectors, some sectors that had never spoken to each other about tobacco control. That revolutionized tobacco control. Moreover, this opened the door to address some of the transnational, cross-border elements of tobacco control, which the tobacco industry was really too much overjoyed to take advantage of, to tap new markets in low and middle income countries, especially women and children. Also buttressing this powerful process was, as Paula was referring to, the evolution of a vibrant civil society movement that advocated for a strong treaty, the involvement of most of the UN organizations through the United Nations, Secretary General's United Nations Task Force on Tobacco Control. And the proof of concept that the Framework Convention was indeed a powerful one was that to see that last set of brackets melting away at 4 a.m. in this building on a rainy Saturday morning in early March 2003, and the fact that the treaty became one of the most rapidly embraced treaties in UN history, entering into force in 2005. Rudiger, on the lessons learned, we couldn't have imagined really how the Framework Convention would indeed change global health policy. In fact, it was the first product-based treaty, international law, to address a health-harming product, redistribute power from the corporate sector to governments and the people. And I think here we have our first lesson. I think the Framework Convention provides a master class lesson learned on how to address vested and commercial interests that harm public health. Secondly, elevating global health governance during the negotiations and entry into force of the treaty also provided leaders with the inspiration to address the crisis of non-communicable diseases. And finally, 20 years on now, as the most high priority pandemic preparedness, prevention, and response accord is under negotiation, I think there are some concise lessons learned from the Framework Convention. Stick to the evidence, focus also on filling those transnational cross-border regulatory gaps and addressing inequity. Also ensure a whole-of-government approach through the negotiations and also in the entry into force. And also, above all, we must always continue to have faith in the preciousness of multilateral diplomacy and multilateral cooperation to ensure that our world will become a healthier and happier one in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Douglas. Dr. Bronwyn King is the founder and director and CEO of Tobacco-Free Portfolios. Working collaboratively with finance leaders spanning banking, insurance, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, asset management, and rating agencies, the Tobacco-Free Portfolios team has raised attention for tobacco-free finance and the need to divest from tobacco industry. Bronwyn, you are very successful in convincing insurance industry, big corporations and funds to divest from tobacco. Does the convention help in that success? Over to you.
Gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and honour to be here today. The treaty, the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, is indispensable for our work at Tobacco-Free Portfolios. Our flagship initiative, the Tobacco-Free Finance Pledge, now has 200 signatories, including some of the world's largest banks, pension plans, and sovereign wealth funds. And they have committed to rejecting tobacco. So by that I mean no lending, no insuring, and no investing in tobacco companies. Now together, those financial institutions that have signed up, they control more than $16 trillion US, and we're just getting started. The pledge would not have been possible without the treaty. At Tobacco-Free Portfolios, we use the treaty every single day. We use it to start conversations with leaders from the finance sector, a sector that is often sort of sitting outside of crucial health decisions. We use it to educate, we use it to engage in debate, and we use it to encourage people to change their minds and to stand alongside governments, the health sector, communities, teachers and parents, and bring an end to tobacco. There are several provisions in the treaty that specifically relate to public money being tobacco-free. And when we bring those provisions to the attention of the leaders of sovereign wealth funds and public pension funds, the leaders act. Now, we must amplify those conversations. If we just take sovereign wealth funds, for example, there's about 70 sovereign wealth funds in the world, but unfortunately, there's only around 10 of them that have so far gone tobacco-free. And in fact, the only thing stopping them is awareness of the treaty and a couple of conversations about the treaty. Aside from public money, the treaty is very helpful in encouraging private financial institutions to go tobacco-free. And that's because the treaty is a reference point, it sets a standard, it draws a line in the sand, attesting to the fact that tobacco is an extraordinary product and it requires extraordinary efforts to bring it to an end. In over 10 years working with the finance sector now, I'm yet to meet a CEO of a financial institution that feels good about having commercial relationships with the tobacco industry. In fact, it's just the way that things have always been. And in fact, I find that it's completely the opposite. CEOs often feel a bit embarrassed, a bit upset and disappointed that the finance sector has really been a bit slow to join the rest of the world in acting to bring an end to tobacco. And when these CEOs do go tobacco-free, they almost invariably feel very proud, and then they help drive more change. Finally, As everyone who works in tobacco control knows, it is a very, very challenging pursuit. So for me personally, the treaty serves as a constant reminder of the remarkable global camaraderie, solidarity, grit, and persistence that collectively means we will solve this problem together. I'm just one person from halfway around the world in Melbourne, Australia, part of one very small team. But the treaty makes us all part of something much bigger. So thank you so much to the tobacco control giants, many of whom are in this room today. Thank you to Dr. Tedros and to Dr. Adriana Blanco Marquizo. Thank you for your leadership, your commitment, your support and your friendship. And happy birthday to the treaty. I'm ready for maybe a little piece of cake. I hope someone organised that. It's inspiring, it's uplifting to be here, and it really brings hope, not just for today, but for future generations, that one day we can all enjoy a world free from tobacco. Thank you.
And a big thank you to you, Bronwyn, and the work you're doing. Ms. Audrey Wong is chairperson of the Public Health of the International Pharmaceutical Students Federation and representative on the WHO Youth Council. For decades, the tobacco industry's deception and devious tactics have hooked generations of users to nicotine and tobacco, driving this global epidemic. The tobacco industry has been preying on children and adolescents, employing advertising tactics and targeting them directly through marketing practice. I'm pleased that today we have the voice of the youth represented here to speak up about this issue. Audrey, the tobacco industry targets more and more children and young people. Are we, as a public health community, doing enough to protect you? What should we do better? What do you expect from the political leadership and the governments? Over to you.
Director General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and young people in the room. As the voice of the future, focal point on the newly launched WHO Youth Council, and a pharmacist myself, we must rise together to combat the relentless targeting of our generation by the tobacco industry. Our collective strength and determination hold the power to bring about a much-needed change in policy and protect ourselves and the future generations from the devastating consequences of tobacco use. It is no secret that the tobacco industry has preyed upon our vulnerabilities, luring us into a web of addiction and suffering. The health risks associated with tobacco use are well documented, ranging from respiratory diseases and cardiovascular conditions to various forms of cancer. These health consequences can irreversibly impact our lives, robbing us on productivity and quality of life. Moreover, the impact of tobacco extends beyond our individual well-being. Second-hand smoke poses a significant threat to the health of our loved ones, friends, and communities. The tobacco industry's targeted marketing strategies aim to create a cycle of addiction that not only harms us, but also perpetuates a cycle of tobacco-related illnesses and premature deaths. While some progress has been made in protecting children and young people, we need more stakeholders to recognize the urgency of this issue and actively engage in the fight against tobacco. Governments, healthcare providers, education institutions, and society as a whole must join forces to protect us and future generations from the irreversible damage caused by tobacco. To achieve this, we call upon policymakers to prioritize robust tobacco control measures. It is crucial to implement comprehensive bans on tobacco advertising, sponsorship, and promotion targeted at youth. By creating environments that discourage tobacco use and ensuring accessible tobacco cessation services, we can help individuals break free from the grips of addiction and prevent the irreparable harm that tobacco inflicts. Education is another vital component of our battle against tobacco. We demand comprehensive and evidence-based tobacco prevention programs that highlight the irreversible health consequences of tobacco use. Foster peer-to-peer education and support is also crucial. By fostering a culture of open dialogue and support among young people, we can strengthen their ability to resist tobacco use and provide them with the tools to influence their peers positively. Let us stand united as youth, demanding policies and actions that protect our health and the health of our future generations. The damage caused by tobacco is too great to ignore, and the urgency to act is upon us. By linking arms with stakeholders, raising our voices, and driving change, we can create a world where the irreversible consequences of tobacco are no longer a burden we bear. Together, let us pave a way for a healthier, brighter future in which our health and well-being are safeguarded for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Audrey, and thank you all for your excellent interventions. We will now move to the World No Tobacco Awards ceremony, but before I invite WHO's Director General to the lectern, let me say a couple of words to you, Dr. Tedros. We have had 6 strategic roundtables, and I think they were really, really excellent. And they were hosted by you. I know that you personally have put a lot of your thinking and time behind them. You have thought about the themes and about the teams that you supported in organizing this. You have been what we appreciate so much, leading from behind. I thank all the panelists for an excellent discussion. Adriana, you can be proud also of the great FCTC Secretariat team that is working hand in glove with my team in health promotion. I think, colleagues, this really is worth a big round of applause. Thank you all very much. And Tedros, if I may invite you now to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. I think some colleagues texted me and they said, how about thanking the former FCTC Secretariat heads? And I said, that's a good idea, actually, because it's our 20th anniversary. So we start from our current one, Adriana. Thank you so much for your leadership. And then, as you know, the first head of Secretariat was Dr. Haik Nikogosyan. Yeah? Nikogosyan? So we appreciate his service. And then the second was Dr. Vera Luisa da Costa Silva. So would like to really appreciate their service. And Adriana, who myself selected, is the third head of Secretariat. And all 3, I know them personally, very hardworking, very focused, very committed. So thank you so much indeed. Thank you. So Adriana, you have to, so I pass it through you to Vera and Haik. Okay. Then a special, maybe remembering him would be really great, because this is the late president of Uruguay, President Tabarez Vasquez. I awarded him the Tobacco-Free Award in 2018. And you know, Uruguay as a country, and him as a leader of Uruguay, but as a person, his passion was amazing, and his commitment. So I'd like also, of course, among many of those heads of state, heads of government we recognized, I think he is one of the most influential. He is the most influential, to be honest. And we need to remember his legacy. And today, let's take it as a commitment to continue his legacy. He hosted us in Montevideo for NCD ministerial meeting, you remember? And anyone can see how committed President Tabarez Vázquez is. And I'm glad we have this opportunity to remember people like him and celebrate him. We hope to prepare something probably for the future to remember him and others who have contributed greatly. Now we go to this year's. Every year, as you know, WHO recognizes exemplary work on tobacco control through the World No Tobacco Day Awards. Today, I'm honored to present the WHO Director General's Special Recognition Awards for World No Tobacco Day 2023 to 3 esteemed winners nominated by the regional directors. By the way, we have also winners by region, and we're focusing today on those finalists at global level. But there is a list which we would probably need to read at the end of this to recognize all the countries and individuals who won the regional awards. So from the 3 first, Dr. Reina Roa Rodriguez from Panama. Dr. Roa is Panama's focal point for tobacco control and Vice President of the Bureau of the Meeting of the Parties to the Protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products. Dr. Roa has dedicated the past 20 years countering the global tobacco epidemic and is globally recognized as a leading tobacco control champion. It's my pleasure to invite Dr. Roa to receive the WHO Director General Special Recognition Award. So our appreciation to you, Reina, and also to Panama.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The second award goes to Her Excellency Dr. Odete Maria Freitas Bello, the Minister of Health of Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste is among the top... Okay, please go on. Timor-Leste is among the top 10 countries in the world for prevalence of tobacco use, with more than 70% of men and almost 30% of women using tobacco. With technical support from WHO, Dr. Bello led the effort to increase tobacco taxes through policy dialogue with the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, the President of the Council of Ministers, and the Parliament, which last year approved an increase in excise duty from $19 a kilogram to $50 a kilo. Already this year, Parliament doubled the duty to $100 a kilogram. Dr. Bello also demonstrated leadership, establishing Timor-Leste's first tobacco cessation clinic and a national quit line. Thanks to the Minister's initiative, tobacco cessation services have been integrated into the package of essential NCD services, and the training of integrated services are rolled out across 4 municipalities. Minister also supported the availability of nicotine replacement therapy for the first time and facilitated its inclusion in Timor-Leste's National Essential Medicines list. So it's my honor to present the WHO Director General Special Recognition Award to Ambassador Maria to Ambassador Maria de Lourdes Bessa of the Permanent Mission of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste to the United Nations Office and the other international organizations in Geneva, who will receive the award on behalf of Dr. Bello. Okay. The third award goes to His Excellency Dr. Ali Mrabet, the Minister of Health of Tunisia. Mabruk, Your Excellency. Despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Mrabet established a multi-party partnership for tobacco control and adopted a decree mandating graphic health warnings to cover 70% of the packaging of tobacco products. Furthermore, a high-level multi-sectoral national anti-smoking committee was established, chaired by the head of government. The Ministry of Health, with WHO support, will support a series of multi-sectoral training sessions to ensure good implementation of the decision and will involve key stakeholders. It's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Dr. Ali Mrabet to receive the WHO Director General Special Recognition Award. Mabruk again, and congratulations. Okay, I think that's it. But if Rudiger, you have the list, would be good to read the regional or, yeah? Okay, thank you. Anyway, if Rudiger, I don't think he will read the list because he doesn't have it. But congratulations, and we will post it, and yeah, appreciate also the other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the roundtable. Have a very good afternoon. Thank you.